Episode 15 The Elephant, the Blind Leaders of the Blind. The new painting that appeared in the temple of the teacher was literally permeated with light, as if illuminated, or even a radiant light emanated from the canvas itself. It depicted a clear, hot day in the desert. The picturesque peaks of the mountain range in the background soared up, clad in a lilac haze. Downy clouds swirled in the serene blue sky. In the central part of the painting was depicted a huge elephant with snow-white tusks, a long trunk, and ears spread wide apart. People in traditional clothes were bustling around the elephant, talking about their belonging to different religions. And, if one looked closely, one could see that the eyes of all those people were completely white, devoid of pupils. At the same time, each of them tried to feel and examine with their hands some part of the body of the massive animal. The keeper of the knowledge was also depicted there, only he was not among these people. He sat with calm confidence on the back of the elephant, on a majestic throne. From the figure of the keeper, the rays of the sun, which hung in the sky behind him, diverged in different directions. There was a feeling that the rays emanated from the figure of the teacher himself, who was dressed in his usual black robe and a cylindrical headdress. The students looked at this figure with awe. Even when depicted on a canvas, the teacher evoked feelings of infinite gratitude for the knowledge, boundless respect, and reverence. When the sage appeared at the door of the hall, all the eyes turned to him. He looked at the students with a warm smile, greeted them, and came closer, with a smooth, floating gait. "Beloved teacher, we have a new picture," a young, bright-eyed girl with long, curly, honey-colored hair came forward. "Please explain its meaning to us. What do all these people want from the elephant?" "This painting is called The Blind Leaders of the Blind," the keeper said in a deep, resonant voice. "Look, here an elephant is depicted, which blind people are trying to feel. And they all symbolize different religions. Here a Jew touches the elephant on the trunk, a Muslim on the ear, a Brahmin holds a front leg in his hands, the Pope of Rome examines a tusk, and a Christian priest feels a hind leg. And down there, the teacher pointed to a man in white clothes, holding a stethoscope against the elephant's stomach. This is a scientist who is studying, trying to hear something through in the belly. "But they don't seem to be getting anywhere, do they?" the girl asked. "Is it because they're all blind?" "Yes, Tamila," the sage nodded affirmatively. "Each of them is blind and does not see the whole elephant. Everyone feels only some of the parts, and therefore none of them can understand the full picture." "And what does the elephant symbolize?" Tamila looked inquiringly at the keeper of the knowledge. "This is the personification of our whole world," the teacher readily explained, answering the student with a warm look. "And each of these people sees only parts of it. And everyone thinks about the world, in this case about the elephant, in different ways. One believes that the elephant is a leg. Another thinks that it is a tail, a third that it is a trunk, a fourth that it is ears, a fifth thinks that the elephant is a tusk. Everyone sees something different, and after that, they start arguing with each other about who has studied the elephant more correctly, who has seen it more correctly." "Teacher, so it turns out that they are all right and wrong at the same time?" a black-haired, swarthy man asked. "Yes, David, well done," the sage nodded approvingly. "That is the thing, that each of them has a part of the truth." Great sage, a slender woman of about 30 turned to the keeper with trepidation. Tell me, why are you depicted here on top of the elephant? Because you see the whole picture of the world as a whole? Yes, Eve, that is right. As a child, I read a lot of different religious literature and thought, why are they arguing with each other? It is just necessary to arrange all the knowledge that they transmit in the right way, and then you will get a complete picture. But different religions continued to argue with each other, and each defended its point of view. This dispute of blind people has been going on for thousands of years, where everyone stubbornly sticks to their own story, and the overall picture is not seen. And then, I decided to gather together all the knowledge of every religion, every spiritual direction. I put them together harmoniously, and they found their place. And then, a single big picture appeared, and it became possible to see the elephant in its entirety. Teacher, why did you say that the painting is called The Blind Leaders of the Blind? David asked. Do you mean that religions act as guides for people who are blind like themselves? That is right, the sage confirmed. You understood correctly. And these leaders cannot lead people anywhere, because they cannot collect all the knowledge and put it into a single map of the world. The keeper of the knowledge finished and looked around at all the students, waiting for new questions. Eve raised her hand again. Teacher, is this not only about religion? Can this be attributed to each of us in the first place? The woman asked, and after thinking for a short moment, decided to clarify her question. We don't see the world holistically either, but it seems to us that our opinion or our vision of a particular situation is correct, and everyone is trying to prove it to others? Yes, Eve, that is a very valuable observation, the sage praised the woman. Every person does this also. For example, one woman had always thought that she knew absolutely everything, and she decided that there was no God. Just because she put a candle on, asked God, and her son never stopped drinking. But at the same time, she herself did nothing to change the situation. On the contrary, she indulged his bad habit. She would buy him beer and give him money for drinks, but at the same time she constantly crossed the corner where her drunk son was sleeping and put candles in church. That is, her actions were radically different from her prayer. Is that the whole point? The student clarified. Yes, you got the point right, the sage confirmed. She asked God for one thing and did the opposite, yet at the same time began to blame God for not helping. And then she made the wrong conclusion after all. If God did not help, then there is no God. It turns out that this woman did not see the whole picture, right? David asked, and pointed with his palm at the canvas. Like those blind people who felt only one part of the elephant? That is right. The teacher nodded affirmatively. She did not see the real state of things, and in order to see it, you need to deeply understand the situation, looking at it holistically from all sides. If we talk about this woman from the example, then in her case, deeply understand means to see that her son is an alcoholic, to realize this, but not to justify it and not to regret it, to see that she herself indulges in his bad habit and does nothing to actually help him. In this case, you need to ask God for wisdom and strength to figure things out and find a way out. When I first started doing yoga, a wiry, short student entered into the conversation. My mother nagged me to death. She said that yogis were dotards and cavemen and wanted me to stop doing that nonsense. And no matter how much I tried to convince her, it all turned out to be useless. It turns out that she also looked at it one-sidedly. She only saw that yogis sat in a cave and meditated, so she made wrong conclusions based on this, right? Yes, Max. Well done. You came to the right understanding. Your mother did not see the whole elephant, the whole picture. Therefore, she did not see the reality. Teacher, may I also share with you a similar example? Eve asked when the sage had finished explaining. He nodded approvingly, and then the woman stepped forward a little and began to speak. I have a friend. She has 6 children and lives with a husband who is a drunkard and constantly complains about how bad she feels that they don't have enough money. The woman paused. But at the same time, she does nothing to change it. And so she says that there is no God, because she asked him for help, yet he never sent her money. It turns out that the situation here is the same as with this elephant. Thanks for the example. Yes, the same thing repeats here, the keeper said. Your friend is in illusions and does not realize the whole reality, seeing only one part, that she and her 6 children are unhappy. And why is she unhappy? And what needs to be done in order to fix the situation? The teacher looked at Eve questioningly. She doesn't think about it, the woman sighed sadly. On the contrary, she tries to find someone else to blame, and God became one of those to blame. A person often tries to justify himself, the sage began to explain, in order to continue living in illusions. And to do this, he needs to find someone to blame, to shift responsibility for his life and mistakes upon them. And to whom can he shift them? Either to relatives and friends, those who are nearby, and in this case, a person constantly has conflicts and scandals, or to someone who will never argue. To God, Eve exclaimed, amazed at how accurately the teacher had revealed all the causes and consequences of her friend's behavior. Yes, it is very convenient. God will not argue with you, and you can shift all your troubles onto him. That is right, the keeper of the knowledge nodded. After taking another look at the picture with the elephant, he intertwined his fingers and looked at the students. And in order to deal with the situation, you also need to look at it holistically and realistically, not to look for excuses for yourself, and take responsibility for your actions. Who is to blame that she found herself in such a situation? Children need to be fed, clothed, and educated. If a woman decides to have children, then she first of all needs to think about how to support them, raise some capital, and earn money. That is, my friend's problem is that she did not think in advance where she would find the money for her children? That she did not see the real state of things in advance? Exactly. Now, in civilized countries, conception and childbirth are approached more responsibly. People plan and think in advance about the material side of the issue, unlike, for example, Africa and other developing countries. Or unlike it was 100 or 200 years ago, when having 6 or 10 children in a family was considered normal, and women got pregnant all the time. If your friend had understood the issue more deeply and in detail, she would have thought about the consequences. Then she would not have lived in poverty, and would not have been looking for someone to blame. And when she turns to God to deliver her from this poverty, the prayer seems to contradict her own actions, like with that mother of the alcoholic. The sage nodded affirmatively. We often ask God that 2 times 2 be 5, he said. But this is impossible, in principle, for nowhere and never will 2 times 2 be 5. And even after praying to the Almighty, this will not change and will not become possible. Why would God violate the laws that he himself created? This person should strive to understand them and not beg God to change the whole world for him alone and change the formula of 2 times 2. Keeper, what does it mean to want 2 times 2 to be 5? David joined the conversation again. Does this mean that you can't ask for something completely fantastic? That there are no miracles? For example, he thought and smiled ironically at the ideas that came to mind. Well, let's say a person has been lying on the couch all his life and prays that at one moment he will become a millionaire or the president of the country. And after that, he also blames God for not heeding his prayers. The students imagined the absurdity of this situation, and a wave of laughter swept through the hall. The keeper of the knowledge also smiled. Yes, David, you are right again. He confirmed the man's words. Here we are talking about the fact that if a person prays for one thing but acts quite the opposite, then no miracle will happen, because 2 times 2 will never equal 5. This simply cannot be in principle, because there is a connection between how we act and what we get. If we pray that God will give us the strength to solve the situation, and at the same time we take action in this direction, do something, then he will help. The sage finished, and for a while silence reigned in the hall. The students pondered the knowledge they had just received, trying to see the whole picture from different sides and combining all the information to comprehend the deeper meaning. The keeper paused until new questions ripened in the minds of the students. Teacher, may I ask, the girl with wavy hair raised her hand, if the problem of these leaders is that they are blind and do not see the whole picture of the world, then what do they need to do to see it clearly? To see clearly, Tamila, you need to understand deeply, the keeper of the knowledge began to explain. And religions give answers to all questions according to their templates and stick labels based on the fact that they know only part of the world. That is what blindness is. That is why we must try to understand each phenomenon more deeply. I have studied every religion and tried to understand it as deeply as possible. At first, I thought they were arguing among themselves, but then I took each religion and assembled them in a bigger picture. That is all I did. And then there was a complete understanding of everything. The problem of people is their blindness. You need to wake up, look at each phenomenon from different sides, and only then you can see how everything is for real. The keeper looked around the students with a calm, wise look. When he gave explanations, there was not a shadow of his own superiority in his voice. Rather, there was regret that representatives of religions could not look at the world holistically, could not unite with each other, and stop senseless disputes. After all, there was truth in each of their opinions. Teacher, may I ask, why do many souls stop at one religion? David said, looking questioningly at the sage. When the soul is looking for something, he began to explain, it no longer wants to live a social life. One stops at Christianity, someone else, for example, at Buddhism, and a third soul has been there, has been here, and begins to look for a teacher, though it is not enough. She somewhat feels empirically that it needs the living knowledge. It does not fully understand yet. Does it depend on the level of the soul? The man asked again. This indicates a weak magnetic center when a person stops at what he finds first, and then he meets with the first religion and thinks that he has found the truth, and he does not understand that this is just one part of the knowledge, and the soul, which has a better developed magnetic center, wants more. It begins to understand other directions, trying not to think in patterns, but to come to an understanding of the essence of things. Teacher, and here's another example, said Tamila. I have a friend who constantly goes to various spiritual trainings, although she never received any realizations and did not reach enlightenment. Yes, There are spiritual tourists, said the teacher. They go in different directions, but for them it is entertainment, tourism. They try a lot, but they study only superficially. Instead, it is necessary to go deeper, because all religions speak about the same thing. Teacher, there is such an expression that says, "The truth is born in argument," Eve said, prefacing her question. There are often arguments in our lives, and everyone has their own point of view. What is the right way? She paused and began to reason further. On the one hand, it is not bad that people express their opinions. After all, a person is so worried about getting the truth, he is in search. And if he is silent, then it means that he does not care. But on the other hand, how do we not go into negative emotions? How can we stop in time and understand that this is just my opinion, and it means nothing? The keeper of the knowledge looked intently at the student, sending her the energy of support and acceptance, approving her keen interest and spiritual search. Yes, Eve, the truth is born in arguments of wise people, he replied, emphasizing the word wise. If two wise men argue, they put forward their arguments, but do not hold on to their opinions and patterns or consider phenomena from all sides. The truth is found when we come from parts to the whole, the sage said, and once again looked at the woman to make sure how much she understood his words, and nodded at the painting. Like the elephant, there are parts. Someone has tusks, someone has a tail, someone has ears. When we add it all up, we get a whole elephant. Then awareness arises and the truth is born. And if each person holds on to his part and does not want to come to the whole, then the truth is not born. And if two fools argue, then in the end, the last-ditch argument will be a fight and physical violence. Teacher, Tamila respectfully addressed the sage, I remember a short anecdote on the topic. May I? The keeper of the knowledge nodded approvingly, and then the girl said, Why did you fight? We were arguing about awareness. There was a wave of laughter among the students, and then a strong man of about 40 came forward, and asking the teacher for permission to tell his story, began to speak. When you mentioned arguments between two fools, I remembered a case. The student's voice was low and slightly hoarse, which gave him an unusual charm. It happened to me many years ago. I was resting while at work for a company and witnessed a dispute. There was a man called Locutus, and he came up with his own theory of a bandage and a bow, and was very proud of this theory. He wrote huge fat books and used up a lot of paper, since there were no computers at that time, and he wrote everything by hand, and constantly carried around 2 suitcases with these insights. And so, this Locutus came to the Ardanskis. There were usually such gatherings that aspired after intellectuality and chosenness. And a professor, Yalogin, also came there. And so, they began to argue about this theory of a bandage and a bow, whether it was correct or not. At first, they gave some arguments, trying to prove something to each other. And everyone asked me, What do you think? Why don't you say anything? But I immediately realized that this was a stupid argument between 2 narrow-minded people, even though one of them was an important professor. I didn't even get involved in this argument. I just kept silent and watched. And one of them said something stupid, and the other said an even stupider thing in return. They became more and more inflamed, and then they started talking in raised voices. Then they began to shout, spitting with fury. Yalogin still somehow tried to keep within the bounds of decency and give arguments, but Locutus had absolutely nothing to say, and he fell silent. His whole face flushed like a ripe tomato, and he couldn't stand it, and blurted out, This is my last word. At this point, the narrator fell silent, sustained a dramatic pause, and the students froze, waiting for the climax of the story. Next, he hit Yalligan on the jaw with all his might, then again and again, and began to beat his opponent. He tried to fight back, and that's how quickly the intellectual dispute turned into a brawl. They could hardly be pulled apart. The climax turned out to be so absurd that laughter rang out among the students again. It looked really funny, but at the same time, it was a sad illustration of boundless human stupidity. The teacher waited until the general merriment subsided and spoke again, summing up everything that had been said. If two wise men had argued about that, then one would have given his argument, the other one his argument, and then they would come to some mutual truth. And if one says something stupid, the second says a stupider thing, and then both start fighting. Then they do not come to any truth. The teacher paused and added weightily, God is unity, and when we must see the whole, put together two opposing opinions, arrange them harmoniously, and only then will the truth be born in argument. The sage paused, and seeing that the students needed to comprehend everything said, began to recite a spiritual poem. The students froze, not taking their eyes off him, and while they listened to the rhythmic lines, intense inner work was going on in their minds. My friend, don't let all people see the depths of my wisdom. This meaning will die in the stream of speech, but you will fail to find the roots. The immeasurable is inexpressible, in words or in your principles. It's like an emptiness invisible, but the heart reflects in them. The immensity of the world's laws you see with feeling, and believe this feeling. Don't create your own canons, and stay away from all the earthly passions. Only then you will see, in love for all your worlds, with only consciousness you will build the perfect temple of knowledge. We invite you to join spiritual seminars, workshops, and retreats hosted by the Leader Masters. Reveal your superpowers, find your predestination, and accumulate power to gain well-being and bring your goals to life. Send an email saying, I want to join the seminar to our mailbox, and we will give you all the information. See you soon.